Welcome to the Create and Grow podcast. We are with you live right now. This is taking the place of my Diamond Mentor moments that I try to do once a week, but I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited, as we head into the holidays, we head into the closing of the year, really to empower people with some new concepts of creativity, what creativity will look like in 2024, their own creative identity, and what it means to really empower your imagination, and why that word isn't just for children, but it's for everyone, especially adults. And now today I have with me a wonderful thought leader, and as we're going, hopefully a great friend. And I have Michael Ackerbauer.
Hmm.
Pronounced correct? Okay,
Yes,
good. Dr. Michael Ackerbauer. He's a business transformation leader currently at IBM Client Engineering, celebrating 25 years, even though he is not doesn't look a day over 30. So he was one of those genius kids, right? But
I
25
have
years at IBM.
I have some cash here for you for saying that. Thank you.
Yes. And he partners with organizational leaders to humanize their digital transformation. A seasoned innovator and intrapreneur, Michael makes complex leadership concepts easy to understand and simple to apply. He holds a master's degree in applied imagination. I did not know that was even possible. I sign me up tomorrow.
Yeah,
And he holds a doctorate degree, which is in my cards, hopefully next year or the year after, a doctorate degree in creative leadership. And recently published his first book, which was sent to me last week. Dr. Michael is also certified rock balancer. Yes, you heard
it's
me
such a
correct.
thing.
Rock
It's
balancer,
real.
which is now a TED Talk, and the link for that is located in the show notes. Welcome to the Create and Grow podcast, Dr. Michael.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, I just love to bring on thought leaders in different disciplines, different genres, different areas of work, and just really to get a full view and vision on what intercultural creativity looks like, neurosomatic creativity, which I'll explain that a little bit later, and
Mm.
a concept that we're talking about called prismatic leadership. But before we jump into that, and of course, the rock balancing part and how you metaphorically tie that into leadership, which is down my alley because I'm all about metaphorical thinking.
Mm.
uh, let's really show who you are to the audience. How did you get to be where you are today?
It's a long and epic tale. I was in four other companies before IBM, 2 years each, doing technology development around database development, systems architecture. It was at the advent of the internet and online transaction processing across other people's servers and computers, and I just discovered that about 8 years in, I discovered that I was more passionate about developing the people who developed the technology than developing the technology myself. And that's when I found this wonderful program at Buffalo State College, now university. It was being taught at IBM by an IBMer who was going to the on campus weekends graduate program. And he was required to do an educational workshop or course online or internally around creative problem solving. And he had a flyer for the school for the program, and it said graduate certificate in creative studies, change leadership, and creative problem solving. And I knew I'd found the missing piece that would allow me to go into a leadership development kind of role instead of technology. And that turned into a master's degree. The program was a graduate certificate. Now it's a full-on master's degree. So they've just rebranded. It is creativity and change leadership is the core of it,
Mhm.
and it's the Center for Applied Imagination. It just sounds so much cooler, and it gets better conversations going, doesn't it?
Yes, 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 it does. And really, like, what does that look like? Applied imagination. Like, how can you? Well, I guess you can like not apply your imagination, but what were some of the courses and some of the activities that you did in that program?
Very much on the research side. Excuse me. But they're coming out. Buffalo State is coming out now with a doctoral program in professional services. So the master's is really the theory, and the DPS is really the on the ground application. And so imagination to me is how do you take those crazy thoughts you have, those inventive ways you think things could be done differently and better and for the good, and you actually go out and champion for them,
Mhm.
applying the creative problem solving process, a universal process that we study deeply, the fundamentals of CPS, the how to facilitate it, understanding how to measure creativity using validated instruments, or creating validating instruments yourself, a change leadership component, and then an awful lot about how do I apply it in the wild, how do I engage people with this learning.
In the wild. I love that. So the World Economic Forum did list creative thinking as one of the top skills needed in the workforce for 2024. We're basically done with 2024, heading into 2025. What is really the state of the union when it comes to our creative thinking for this next decade, really, for the remainder of this decade?
Yeah, it's getting more, is this the right word, variegated. When you look at the 2025 World Economic Forum listing, they've now broken it out by problem solving, and I forget the other two off the top of my head. But you look at them and you go, all of those have to do with some aspect of being creative or interacting with people in creative ways. So emotional intelligence around self-awareness and empathy, critical thinking, being able to handle complex thinking, and applying a more methodical approach to things that we find today that are chaotic like they never were before. So to me, it's really about the relationships we have with people. If you can't foster good, solid, trusted relationships with people, it's going to be very, very hard to affect meaningful change.
And that's really what my work kind of drives, that I talk about in the 7 gems. Adam, I'm not sure, did I send you a book yet?
You did. Yes, you did. Thank you. Yes.
It's the intercultural part is so in alignment with the creative thinking part. That was the aha. To be highly creative, I need to see what my open-minded is with working with people,
Right.
different types of people from different lived backgrounds, and that actually spurs my creative thinking when I really diversify my interactions. I'm open-minded. I'm not so judgmental so quickly. I'm curious, right? Curiosity sits on both
Right.
shelves. So since you are a doctor in the area, right, what are things that leaders can do? Because a lot of our work now is the leadership and prismatic leadership, and I'll focus on that a little bit later.
Yeah.
What's out the gate? What do you want to tell the leaders out there who have teams of 10, 20, some 100, and they're all coming from sometimes around the world? What does that look like?
I'm going to say it in a slightly crude way. In the 90s, there was a certain presidential campaign whose theme was, "It's the economy, stupid." And here, it's the people. You care about the process, you care about the technologies, you care about the tools that affect change or we can implement. It all rides and falls on the people that you hire, the people that you staff, the people that you grow and cultivate relationships with. And if they're not bought in and they don't see a vision, they're just being told what to do, then it won't be what you imagined.
Yeah. That's so good. And now really coming into what does it look like to develop people, right? As far as prismatic leadership, that's our new flagship program that we're doing. And I want your take on it. So when you walk out into the sun, right, you leave your house and it's sunny and it's beautiful. Are you aware that you're surrounded by rainbows?
I don't think about it consciously. My granddaughter looks for them all the time when she's riding around with me.
Well, tell her she's on point.
Yeah.
So, because because as from a scientist point of view, you understand how the sun works, and they're different. All the colors of the rainbow are in the sunlight, and if you can see them, what your granddaughter's looking for, she's looking for prisms, right?
Right.
Either the raindrops, or certain things around her that acts as a prism in order to separate the light and the frequencies that our eyes and our brain interprets as different colors, correct?
Right. Yes.
And that's really what prismatic leadership is. Have you been in a position where you've had your team members under you and you're looking at a certain team member and you see all these like gifts and skills that they're not even aware of, right?
Yeah.
How do you as a leader, introduce that to them and help them develop something called their, hidden potential, like Adam Grant's book that just came out?
I'll take it the other way, and I'll say this most recent role that I have in client engineering, I wasn't sure I was going to have another role in IBM, and I was looking a number of different places and putting out feelers and working my network internally because I wanted to stay, and I I had a series of I had a conversation with someone who led me to someone else, and then several weeks later, somebody wrote me internally, and my resume and my name had been passed down through a couple different people. I don't even know who they all are. And he said, "You are exactly what I'm looking for in this role." And I looked at it and I went, "I think I see it conceptually, but I don't know that I." It's not that I don't agree with you. It's something that's a little bit of a fuzzy mental block for me. I don't see the prism there. And he was right. And what he did is he cast vision for the role. He cast vision for what we were trying to accomplish. He explained to me where we have strengths on the team and in the organization, and he said, you fill some gaps here. You complement some things here that we don't talk about, namely the people, not just the tools and the processes." I thought, okay, you're right. That's true, and most of that's been enablement. We're selling hard cash for green dollars. I'm really curious how that's going to work. And turns out he was more right than I gave him credit for, and more right than I thought I was capable of. So I think looking at him as the example, when he saw something in me, he called it out of me. He cast a vision that resonated with me, and then he gave me pretty good challenges to go after it, and a lot of free reign. I'm here for you. I'll support you. I'm not the boss. You are. I'm here to shield you from everything that flows downhill. You tell me what you need so we can be successful together. I guess in a word, empowerment.
And and
Yeah,
that's what we call prismatic leadership. Like they're
yeah.
able to see what's hidden. I'm not sure if you got Adam Grant's book. It's
I haven't
amazing,
got it
but
yet. Is it good?
hidden potential.
Mm.
The science behind just pulling out all these talents and gifts, and how do we develop them. And it's funny because my first 15 years of my career, I worked in the K-12. So I was an elementary school teacher, and then I ran the music program, and then I started a nonprofit for 6 through 12, and then I taught even at the university level for a little bit. But when you work with children, or when you're with your grandchildren, I'm not sure they're 3 or 5 or seven.
She's 4.
She's 4, right?
Yeah.
Like as a 4-year-old, that she's developmentally at certain areas, but 10 years from now, she's not going to look the same. Hopefully she should be thinking the same. Her emotional development should be more advanced, right?
Yep.
You're hoping these things are going to happen
Right.
when we look at children. But why don't we as leaders do that with a 25-year-old or
Yeah.
35-year-old? Like when I look at or when someone looks at a 35-year-old, if they don't grow for the next 5 years, it's not a red flag. But if it's a 5-year-old, it's a huge red flag, right?
Right.
But
Right.
how can leaders really shift their thinking to say, what's the growth pattern of this person, even though they're in their adulthood and they're not a child with these strict milestones that we're all aware
7 different schools of thought here. The pressing one is not taking for granted what people do and how they do it. And so I guess vision of what could be and a challenge that is doable, and then allow for incremental progress towards meaningful goals. Then you can see who's stepping up to it and who isn't, and who needs coaching, and who's maybe not going to go along on the journey. And that's okay too if they don't go. Um, a Maxwellism, John Maxwell, I like, train them or trade them. So if I'm not offering and cultivating continuous learning and continuous improvement, then I'm begging for status quo, and I'm going to get left behind. My organization, my company, we're going to get way in the behind.
So with dealing with that, so we need to understand that there's a mindset. There's always mindsets involved, right? And
Yeah.
there's a lot of work coming out of the research, Kara Dweck's work, and then some people are needing to develop her work a little bit more. I've seen people in line, and then some people looking to dive a little bit deeper.
Mhm.
Just because of my background in psychology and in working with children, I'm very much aware of how belief systems are built, especially during the primary years. What are your thoughts when you're dealing with adults
Yeah.
who have mindsets? I call it creative abuse. The other types of abuse, such as physical abuse, or just different abuses that a lot of people deal with. But
Yeah.
a lot of people don't talk about creative abuse. Like I
Yeah.
meet adults that they don't do things in their adulthood because of one statement that was said in the 10th grade,
Yeah.
or something that happened in the 6th grade that they carried all the way into their adulthood. how do you deal with wanting the people to be creative on
Mm,
your team, or training leaders to do this with their teams?
yeah,
And people are coming in with different courage levels, different risk-taking levels
yeah,
as well.
yeah. And walking in limiting beliefs, self-limiting beliefs that say I'm not creative. I said that when I went into the creativity program. That's not for studying creativity. And and this is how crazy it was when I told my dad I was in a master's program for creative problem solving and creativity. He said, "Wait a minute, you're getting a graduate degree in basket weaving? Are you kidding me?"
Underwater basket weaving, which is the real thing, by the way.
It's, well, it takes mastery even for that. But and my dad was one of the most creative people I knew. I said, "Dad, you could have had patents for everything you did." And he ran a lab and he had an auto shop, and most of it was hobby. And I said, "Dad, why didn't you monetize that? Why didn't you sell it or something?" And he said, "I wasn't in it to make money. I was lazy and I wanted to get my work done faster." So he was extremely creative in service to his goal.
Hmm.
And I think that's a key piece here is um, we don't necessarily see the gem that we have because we've kind of pigeonholed or stereotyped them in a role which comes with a certain kind of creative thinking. And you don't think about, say, accounting is creative unless people are getting creative with the numbers. You don't think about working a plan that doesn't sound, it doesn't have that ideational sex appeal to it, but it's essential to take a big idea and break it down into piece parts that are tangible, that you can test and hypothesize, improve or not. So I use a platform called Foresight. It's an instrument, it's an assessment. I don't necessarily talk about it. I listen for what I'm hearing as creative expression that people don't recognize as creative. And so when people say I'm not creative, I say, well, I used to think that too. And if you ask me about music, I say I play the radio. But I understand the creativity of music. I understand what sounds good and why what appeals to me that makes it novel and useful or meaningful. And that's my working definition of creativity. Is it something that you said, wow, I hadn't thought about it that way before? And can it be applied in some way by you or someone else? So my dad loved bluegrass music. I wasn't nearly as, it's novel, but it wasn't nearly as meaningful to me as it was him, right? But it was creative in its own way. Okay. Well, we all have a different style of creative thinking. We just don't recognize it as such. So that's how I tend to call it out and I listen for it. I've already been thinking about, okay, you were in K through 12. To be in a kindergarten class in particular, you have to have excellent time management, which means you probably had a focus on we got to get this stuff done by this time and we got to hold to the thing and it's got to be done this way. So there's certainly that's an implementation statement. Okay, so Janine is very busy and on the go, and she has a vision and she has drive and she's getting things done. So there's at least one or two other potential creative thinking styles that I hear in that conversation. So I would call that out of people. I just say, seems to me you like to get lots of stuff done, and seems to me like they're very meaningful things to you. And when you do it, you have focus, and you want to do it with quality. See, those are creative things. Those are creative acts. Oh, you like to be very methodical in deciding what the right approach is for us to implement this technology. That's great. I want to call your attention to business value and why it matters. And then I'm going to ask you, what's the best way to get there? And so I don't have to say, be more creative. I give them the open ended questions that lead to creative thinking they didn't maybe know they had.
Yes, and I heard research that said when you tell someone be more creative, that actually kind of stunts it, which
That's
is
creative abuse. That right there is creative abuse. Yeah.
sometimes my son
Yeah.
and I are like, be more creative, or like maybe we should rephrase that, like inspire you. I don't know. We'll have to run that through. But so many things. So with the kindergarten example, I actually see it from a different lens as well. So yes,
Yeah.
teachers have to be mindful of what to implement in time frames. But if you've been in a kindergarten classroom recently with your daughter, what your granddaughter is headed for, you
It's
also have to be
chaos.
very adaptable,
Oh,
right? So
yeah.
how
Oh,
do you get
absolutely.
things done? And
Yeah.
there's a bee that flies in the room. Good luck with that one. That actually happened to me, and then how do you bring certain things into their learning experience, right? Because
Yeah.
yeah, that was the best training ground. I am so happy
If you
I
can
had
handle that.
15 years with that because they taught me how to do what I'm doing today with adults.
Right, right, right. So let's draw out a little nuance here, though. I think structure you also had to be flexible in the moment and adaptable to what was going on. So not rigid, but there's structure to what you do and how you do it and when it has to happen. And that takes a lot of energy. And oh boy, that's got to be, you got to have a lot of passion for those little people that I don't have. Energy to keep up with them and passion, because just the fact that they're together and playing and the learning is kind of by osmosis, or actual creative flow is happening. That's a gift. I don't have
Yes,
that gift.
and yes, you do, because you do.
Not
I
that,
know you
not
just
that
don't
energy
stand
thing, but
there.
the little one. Yeah.
I know you don't stand there and lecture to your granddaughter for 2 hours. I know you
That's
play,
right.
right?
Yeah, we
So
do.
play is
Yeah.
in you.
Yeah.
And with that, we're talking. We have great thought leaders like Van de Lamone, I think is how you pronounce her last name, and just other thought leaders out there in the world of play.
Mhm.
Jeff, one of our cafe speakers as well, and getting not pushback now, definitely not now, but definitely like 10 years ago, right, 5 years
Yeah.
ago, of what does it look like to bring play and rest, default mode, network time. I don't know if you saw my brain, but I do travel with the brain,
I
because
love
we're
it.
really big on what's going
Yes.
on in the brain while we're creative.
Yes.
How do we convince corporate that play is a
Mm.
part of the creative innovation strategy, and rest or staring out the window, deep think time? Like, what does that look like to actually put it on our Google calendar,
Mm.
so they up the credibility of this internal work, as Dr. Natalie Nixon calls it, that yeah, internal work or invisible work, she says.
Sure. I don't think you can legislate it, but you have to allow for it and promote it. We don't expect you to be 9 to 5, heads down, 40 hours a week, 40 hours a week, 5 days a week. We're not here just to sit down and do your thing and go home. We have to allow for that. So you have to have spaces, physical spaces for people who meet in person. I have suggested, it's never been very successful, but I've suggested to people that are remote, stay on a Zoom or a WebEx or a Skype call. You don't have to talk to each other, but stay on it. So if you have a question, you can ask each other as if you were in the room together. So there's no gap between my thought and my question, or my idea and somebody to bounce it off of. Um, what worked for IBM was twofold. We brought in tools that facilitated remote conversations like Slack and Mural, and we also built open spaces in the buildings. This was pre-COVID, 5 years before COVID, where we had lots of open areas, whiteboards everywhere, glass conference rooms, but they were like cubicles, or little spaces you could go work in the fishbowl, but then you came out and worked with everybody else. And so it was an open landscape. And that was all under the umbrella of an agile transformation. And I'm not
Mhm.
selling agile as a solution so much as talking about business agility. You've got to have that space that we can breathe, we can listen, we can exhale and inhale, diverge and converge. And it can't be in the cube farm, and it can't be in an office and expect to have the same kind of interaction. That
Mhm.
doesn't mean if you build it, people will come. You've got to then you've got to then set the tone in the culture that this is what we look for. We want those conversations, even if they sound like serendipity, or I don't know why we're here talking, but something can come of it. So allow for that.
Yeah. Yes, there's so much there. And also, some things that I'm doing with my clients is challenging them to get out of their departments.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're an accountant, do you have 2 hours on your schedule, or once a month? I'm hopefully working with a zoo, next month,
Nice.
because I was at the IAPA fair, which is amusement parks and attractions. So these are all,
Okay.
running that. And yeah, there's people who just work with the animals. There's people who are just in the office. There's people who are, client facing and customer facing. So they have very distinct roles. But
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, has accounting hung out with the giraffes, for a little bit?
Right.
What does that look like?
Right.
And because from my own experience, I took self initiative. So when you're looking for these new workers or these new team members, what does it look like to look for that self initiation?
Yeah.
People who literally put themselves in uncomfortable positions in order to learn and stretch their open mindedness and their experiential. Uh, I don't know what word to use. Portfolio, right?
Sure. Sure. Yeah. I want to quote a research paper that I was struck a chord with me during my research for my dissertation. It says um, people who stand on the periphery of other social networks are at much higher risk for bringing back new ideas. So the idea of being like on, connected to multiple different spokes, being a spoke in a couple different areas and saying, look what I've heard. You can't come up with new ideas if you don't think in new ways. And if you're challenged by different types of thinking, like accounting going out with design or with advertising and marketing or sales, those are completely disparate kinds of disciplines with tremendously different thinking styles required to do the job effectively and well. And if you force isn't the right word, but if you allow for some of that give and take, people get all kinds of new empathy and insight for each other. Oh, your department needs this. Why? And that's what you're doing? I didn't know that. Well, now we have a whole new way of talking to each other. And oh, by the way, usually you can facilitate those really, really well with food.
Who loves refreshments? I'm like, if refreshments are there, sign me up. And that's what I wrote about in my book. I went to for teachers on the history of China during the Zhang dynasty or something, and all the teachers there are either high school or collegiate level, and then here's me like the kindergarten. They're like, why are you here? And I was like, the refreshments, and because it's
Yeah.
exactly what you told me. Even though I'm working with 5 to 10-year-olds, just being around you, seeing where they're headed, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Being exposed to the curriculum. I went to different, just Korean. Just number one, the food was great, and the stipend was fun too. But we would have the teachers, including myself, on the summer take a week out, and I walked the streets of Duke Ellington for a week, and I went down to Mississippi, and I would just forcefully put myself in these learning situations. I wish more teachers would take advantage of that. This is pre-COVID. I think
Sure.
the NEH, the National Endowment for Humanities, is putting it back on. But they would pay us to go for a week and learn about these things, and I would just sign up for things that sometimes didn't even connect to my
Right.
curriculum that I had to
Right.
teach, but it made me make connections, right?
Right.
And that's really what I wanted to transfer into to next. How do you balance rocks? This is a rock my father painted. It says "Be do have."
We do have. Love it.
We do rock painting, not rock balancing.
That's okay.
But first of all, what is rock balancing, and how do you metaphorically make the bridge to leadership success?
It's a great segue because what I wanted to close on was what you just talked about going to these different places. You too strong a word, but you forced a connection you would not have had if you hadn't gone to that luncheon to listen to this talk, but you were there for the food. But the cross conversations that came out of it were probably fruitful. We do a technique like that in creative problem solving. Here's a pencil. Let's think about the challenge we've been talking about today. What aspects of this pencil resonate with you in terms of the challenge we're looking to solve? And what is it about the pencil that makes you think differently? And or something like, I have a challenge. Now I want to word dance. So I want to just change up some of the language, the verbs or the pronouns or the subjects to see what comes out of that playfulness and curiosity. Same for me with rock balancing. I went to a conference that I was invited to in Toronto in 2006, a long time ago, and called Mind Camp, Mind with a D, the Mind Camp. And so I was hot on Stephen Covey and Daniel Goleman, John Maxwell. So I went out to teach or present on emotional intelligence, and it was along the line. Many of the community of my graduate school were there, and that's how I knew about the camp. But not nearly as research oriented and structured like a conference. It was what are the walking paths with the stones? Um,
Oh yeah.
you know what I'm
Yes.
talking about, right? There
Uh-huh.
was that in the middle. We were in cabins. It was a little rustic. There were all kinds of different conversations and things going on. It wasn't just straight up, let's talk creativity from an academic perspective. It was there. And everybody kept asking me, Mike, are you going to the rock balancing workshop? And I said, the what? What is that? Well, that's why you have to go. You have to find out. And I'm like, okay. And I was even more kind of experimental then and adventurous then than maybe I am now. And I went, and we sat just in this open space in the basement of the main cabin. And the lady, there was a couple, and the wife said, "Okay, we're going to teach you about rock balancing. We're going to go outside and we're going to show you how you can balance rocks. But here's the three principles. One, any two rocks will balance over time. Two, the rocks will speak to you." And the whole focus of the TED Talk is number three, I don't remember what the third principle was. And so that's probably why I'm still very amateur at it. What I discovered from doing it was it can be done. You can make two rocks stand on end and in, total defiance of gravity.
Wow.
And if I can do that, anybody can do it. And I've proven it to other people. The certification was soft. It was great. You've done it and you've repeated it and we saw it. Congratulations. I didn't even get a certificate.
Oh, we'll send you one. I know how to make them
Thank you.
on the fly.
Thank you. So I started doing it at different places. I came home that summer and we would go yard sailing and I found rocks in people's yards and I just do something with them and they said, maybe you should go do that for a living. Maybe somebody pay you to do that. I never got there. But there's this place in Massachusetts on the coast where it's a rock field when it's low tide. And it was just happened to be the place we love to go on vacation. And then I discovered rock balancing. And so I would just do it for the fun of it. And really what it became is sculpturing. I was sculpting these rock formations. And every high tide, the rocks would go away. You start the next low tide with a blank canvas. So for me, it was just this wonderful therapeutic thing that was artistic to me and had meaning that other people would walk by and look and walk and go, where did that come from? It looks like all these monolith, like mini Stonehenges. Then I started talking about it in terms of teamwork, and I realized every team has a different sense of, and I was doing a lot of agile coaching at the time. And to me, the point of agile ways of working and Scrum as a framework is it facilitates creative flow by streamlining whatever process we're going to use in a structured way that's very democratic and very teams can be very autonomous about how they do it. But when they work that way, they have more opportunity for that creative insight that everyone feeds off each other, which I think is the ultimate value of purpose of diversity of thinking is we start building solutions and building possibilities we couldn't alone, and then it starts to take off. Okay, with the rocks, there's always 3 points of balance that have to be there for it to stay in place, and they're almost never the same and barely repeatable. And I started thinking about how teamwork is all about, from an agile perspective, it's all about getting shared understanding of why we're here, why do we exist as a team, and that each of us has something in that purpose that we engage with and we're committing to for us and for the team. It's both. A shared process for how we're going to do meaningful work, and it has to be transparent and explicit to everyone that needs to know, so it will hold us accountable. And if it's transparent, we can inspect it. If we can inspect it, we can adapt it. So I'm doing this and the rocks are telling me yes or no. Will they fall? Will they stay in place? It's very transparent, very obvious, very immediate. And we have to have a shared team dynamic that allows for effective communication, trust, so we can be vulnerable with each other, so we can have participative safety. I like that term better. It's safe for me to engage here in a new way or bring out an idea. And it won't be squashed. It may not be welcomed, but it won't be discarded and it won't be creative abuse. So the rocks told me where there was a purpose. This is the purpose. This is the through line, the gravitational center of the combined set of rocks. They would tell me what was working for them and what wasn't. And there was a process we had to go through to find that right way of, you'll click this way, you'll click that way, but now I have to counterbalance the two. So that's just a give and take. And so it just became a wonderful metaphor of teamwork, of doing the right work, doing the work right, doing the work well.
See, I will probably write about you in my next few books, by the way,
Okay.
because
Okay.
that is really the epitome of what I want to leave with the world. If I get 100 years on this earth, it's like, how do I teach the world to dance again, to sing again, to create again, to think again, and to make connections where people aren't seeing connections, or
Yes.
the unobvious connections. And part of that is exactly what you did. You went to an event, right? You got out of your normal routine and went to event. And then even at the event, you went to, one of the sessions that was not a part of your normal, because, a lot of times people, if I'm a plumber, I go to a plumbing conference and I take, what's new in plumbing. And I tell people, if you're in plumbing, go to, creativity conference. If you're an educator like me, go to a beauty conference. I don't know, but the beauty part of the beautiful part of my job now, keynote speaking on creative thinking and intercultural creativity, is it's a topic that everyone needs. Like, as long as you're human, you can do this. And so, being at an HR conference, I did a keynote at an HR conference, and then Serious Business, which is like the top beauty conference. So, hair care and makeup, the lash. And I did a lash conference. Like, it's a verb. Like, oh, did you lash today? Or, yeah. And then Gilead Scientific, which is a pharmaceutical conference, and finance. And every month I find myself in a different field. And I'm that type of person where I just don't go get on stage, keynote, and fly out the next minute. If I'm able to, sometimes I'm there like 3 days. I've had several people come up, like, not like, you're still here, but it's like, oh my goodness, you're still here. We've never had a keynote, like, stay and go to the sessions. But I'm like, people paid $400, $500, $600 to be here. If I'm here for free, like, you're paying me to be here, and I'm not going to go sleep in the hotel room. I want to learn what you're learning, like, what's new.
Soak it up.
Yeah. So I can make connections, and like, how do you train leaders to look out for those type of people, and build it up in the people who did not have that formative year experience of just going into new places that's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because the brain doesn't like uncomfortability. It doesn't like to be out of its routine.
Right. Our previous CEO, Jenny Rometty, is very well known for saying growth and comfort do not coexist. So how do you get people out of their comfort zone? That's what I talk about when I work with my current clients in healthcare. We want to help them de-risk innovation. So how do you take the risk out of, not all the risk, but how do we minimize risk for people to say it's safe for me to take a step into the unknown? I'm thinking of the movie, one of the Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones movies. And there's a point where he's going for the Holy Grail, and it's a chasm. It's just dark, and there's no way to get over there and cross that chasm. And then someone shows him it's really there. You just throw some sand on it, and you can see that it's actually solid. It looks invisible. It looks like it's not, but it is. And you got to give people that path. Just shine a little light. If I'm a massive ideator, a massive visionary, I'm not going to tell somebody who's very methodical and down in the weeds of the work, all the precision that's necessary. I can't get them to connect to the vision, but I can get them to connect to one step forward that makes it better.
Yes.
So how do we make this process better, this thing better? Here's where we want to go. I'm not asking you to go there. I'm asking you to just help me get one step closer to the goal.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do enough of those, it's one of the Christmas movies, the stop animation. Put one foot in front of the other, and soon you'll be walking across the floor. 1 foot in front of the. I won't sing it. 1 foot in front of the other. Pretty soon you're walking out the door. So it's incremental progress towards a meaningful goal, which is, by the way, a wonderful book on this that I assigned to my master's degree students is Teresa Amabile, The Progress Principle.
Okay.
And her husband, Stephen Kramer. And the through line of the book is, when people have meaningful goals to shoot for, and they are seeing progress towards those goals in an incremental fashion, it fuels their creativity. It fuels their inner work life, she calls it. And if they don't have that, it will take away from their inner work life. And of course, what you don't want with people is when they don't feel creative, whether they think in those terms or not, you don't want them doing critical work for you, because they're not going to go above and beyond to get it done.
Yeah. Yes. And I see that. Definitely see it in myself. I try to go above and beyond it, and I look for ways to add in my creativity to make the organization flow. That's probably why my bosses never wanted me to leave the jobs that I had, because you want these people on your team, right?
Right. Well,
Um,
and then you don't want a superhero either,
yeah.
right? Okay, Janine will do it. Just let her do it. Okay, she'll take
Yeah.
care of it. Pretty soon you're going overflow or saturated. But to your point there, I think I lost it. I'll come back. I'll interrupt you in a minute when I remember what I was going to tell you.
Okay. Well, because I was going to flip.
Good.
Well, emotional intelligence is huge, and I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure you could talk a lot about that. And I wanted to make one point about the hobby. One thing I do, I call it the dimifying your life, right? Having a diamond shaped life, where at the top of the diamond, I might just get my diamond out. At the top of the diamond, in the crown area, I have people list their job responsibilities, right? Data analyst or whatever it is. And then at the pavilion of the diamond, and then I joke and say, you didn't know you're going to get diamond anatomy today, right? But the pavilion, which is this part, this is called the table right there. But the pavilion is where I have them list their hobbies. Like, what do you do where you don't get paid? You just, and you're in flow, you love it. And, people come up with some really cool things. And my job is to do what you just said. Listen deeply for the underlying skill sets that they're not even aware of, right?
Right.
And people who garden, I'm like, wow, that means you're very observant, you're very patient, you're able to translate plants don't talk, so you have to do the translation of what this plant needs in order to survive and thrive, not just survive but thrive. I karaoke sing. If I went to you, if you were my boss, and I love to karaoke, you're automatically say, okay, she knows how to work like good karaoke singing, not that just you're having fun, which is fun. But like, you can work a crowd, you know how to present, you know how to communicate emotion, right, through multiple levels. So what are some things that you can give just leaders in order to strengthen their ability to observe? Well,
That goes to the answer I had for you earlier, which is you've got to, and I lost it again. How do you've got to how to draw it out of them, how to see it in them? Well, I've heard a lot on LinkedIn, for instance, over the past year or so when I was looking heavily at roles, and they would say, and in fact, I've said it to my own kids and younger, earlier career people, that you don't necessarily have to check every box on the job description. What you want to prove to them is not only do you have passion and energy, you're willing to go above and beyond, but you will learn. And the energy you have will compensate for the lack of skill you have, which they shouldn't be punishing you or penalizing you for not having those skills at 25. When they're looking for a 35-year-old with 15 years of experience or so in that role. So show them what you're capable of. And I think it's a reverse here, is calling out what people are capable of and identifying it in them. Fantastic way. What are your hobbies? Asking questions, just being curious about people. And caring about what their answers are. Right. If I care about you, John Maxwell, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
I would attribute that to Maya Angelou, but I don't know who really said it.
Well, Abraham Lincoln said, don't trust everyone on the internet.
This is true. And he also said, which is true, I can learn from everyone I meet, either what to do or what not to do.
What not to do, right. Yeah. So whoever said it, it's profound, right? Maya Angelou, I think, said, people may not remember what you said, but they remember how you made them feel.
Yes, maybe that's the quote. Maybe I mixed up my quotes. Yes,
take them together. And that's powerful stuff. And if you're a visionary leader and you want to get stuff done, that's great. Make sure that your vision translates in a way that's tangible enough for them to take that step.
Yes, and I think that's why our work is so important, because I feel like with Dr. Goldman, David Goldman's work with emotional intelligence, when he came out with that book, what was that, like late 90s? I think he got kind of laughed at. It's like, what? But we're in business. It's about the bottom line. Like, what do you mean emotions have a place at work? You're crazy, And now we know that the brain is an emotional brain first. Things that get filtered through into the cognitive prefrontal cortex goes through. The amygdala is basically the switcher, right? If there's fear, if there's a toxic environment, the information gets
goes away. This frontal, it just stops. It goes back there.
So as we're winding down, I definitely wanted to get to your book. I am
Oh yeah.
so excited. Now this is a faith-based book, and I am a
Yeah.
faith-based person. Um, and it's attached to what we've been talking about, the power of metaphorical thinking and the power of the psalm. The book is called, in how do you pronounce this word? Adullam?
Adullam or Adulam,
Okay.
either
In the
or.
cave of a Adulam, Songs of Lockdown, Reflection on the Psalms and Proverbs. Can you give us
Yeah.
a little background about this and what
Yes.
inspired it?
It was twofold story. One is that as I've been a pastor for 15 years as well. As I've been teaching Bible studies and things over the years, I would say to people, there's 150 Psalms, chapters of Psalms in the Bible, and there's 31 chapters of Proverbs. On average, there's 30 days a month. If you read 5 chapters of Psalms and 1 chapter of Proverbs every day, you could read both books almost every single month. And people go, "Oh, that's interesting," and dismiss it. And I dismissed it until I was doing a writing challenge, and I thought, I tell people this, but I don't actually maybe explain what I mean. And so I just set myself a 30-day, 31-day writing challenge around those 6 chapters a day. And that's just me thinking out loud about what the chapters meant to me as I was interpreting them. And it happened that I started it before COVID, but I really completed it and edited all of the essays, if you will, the reflections during the lockdown in the decade that was 2020. And I started to send it out early 2021 to some people because some people said, "This is really great. Are you going to make a book out of it?" And I went, "I guess I could, but hadn't considered it." And so I sent it out to some people, but I waited because I'm like, I can't just say daily devotional and Psalms and Proverbs. Everybody can do that, and so many people probably already have. So I said, "Well, what is this about?" And I thought, yeah, Songs of Lockdown. This was my and some of what was going on for me. Everybody has their own COVID stories, right? I had some pretty uniquely traumatic things going on that aren't worth discussing. Just to say that I identified with everybody struggling through COVID, and Songs of Lockdown just felt right. And because most of the Psalms are written by King David, it seemed fitting that I would talk about his whole journey of exile starting in this cave. And in this cave, he's all alone. He's been unjustly accused, and he's being sought after for his life. And the king that he serves wants him dead because he's envious of this young boy, not even 20, and he's hunting him down. And David says, "In my integrity, because of who God is in my life, I'm not going to attack him. I know God will rescue me. I know that this is not my destiny." And he found a new community in this cave. 400 different people who were in distress, in debt, and discontented. And he formed a community there that was so powerful. Many of those group of people there became his mighty men of valor when he became king. So in the cave of Adullam is what was it? We all have, here it comes, we all have our own moments of emotional lockdown. We're all under sheltering in place or under self-imposed emotional quarantine. And in those moments, my challenging thought, usually kind of the through line of when I teach, is how do you deal with hardship? And how does it build it reveals character? It doesn't build it. You have to learn from the lockdowns and the extreme situations and the trauma. You've got to learn from that to apply it for growth later. And similar to what we've been talking about with leadership, reflection and improvement, continuous improvement. I want to be curious going forward. How do I do that differently than I do now? So that whole concept of reflecting on what these things mean to me and then applying it, so the next time I come under hardship, I can weather it better, or I can respond to it, not react to it, or I can be proactive in it, not reactive.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much there. I can do a separate podcast with you just from from
That'd be fun.
from there. Yeah, because just really quick, and I'll maybe we should schedule that. But I went through the Proverbs myself and just did one a day, and this was in
Amazing.
2020.
Yeah.
And just looking at the metaphorical connections
Yeah.
and just, I mean, the wisdom and everything there. So definitely, this is on Amazon. People
Yes,
can
it
find
is.
this on Amazon, and I'm doing it as a week study, but you can do it as a day as well. I need some extra time to really noodle on things.
Sure.
Thank you. So thank you so much for being on the podcast, for just sharing your wisdom about where we're going within these areas of EQ, creative thinking, team building, and leadership. Now we are the gems, right? The diamonds. We believe everyone should shine bright. Everyone should be prismatic, and a prismatic leader. What is your gem of wisdom you want to leave with our audience today?
See in others what you want them to see in you. If I want people to recognize me, not for ego's sake, but for intrinsic value and human dignity, then be the bully pulpit that models that to other people.
Ah, that's good. That's good. It reminds me of the Gandhi quote, right? Be the change
Yeah, yeah.
you wish to see in the world. Well, thank you, Dr. Pastor Michael Ackerbauer. It's been a pleasure to learn from you. I will definitely stay in contact with you as I have my revelations with your work, and still looking to you for just the creativity advancement. And also at IBM, hopefully I'm in Minnesota a lot doing some work with some other companies. Are you in Minnesota area or
I'm in New
somewhere else?
York. I'm in New
Oh,
York.
yes, New York, New York.
Yeah.
But I know I had an uncle move to Minnesota because he was working with IBM.
Rochester's a big site. Yeah.
Yes, the Rochester, exactly. My mom actually moved there for a little bit. Like, what are we doing in Rochester? But but just, yeah, thank you so much. Creativity is a constant conversation. So looking forward to continuing it with you in the future. Thank you to you and your family. When our next book comes out, it's called The Power of I Am, with Sean and I and my husband, just declarations that we say as a family, and then going into the neuroscience of the words that we speak are powerful, but what do words do to our brain, right? And to our mindset. So I will definitely send you and your granddaughter your signed copy. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you for our audience who tuned in. We had a few live people as well. Mike timed in. He's always following our Diamond Mentor moments. But thank you so much, and we will be in contact. Thank you to our audience. Don't forget to live your best interculturally, creatively designed life. Get the books. Get his book. Get my book, 7 Gems of Intercultural Creativity, and my beautiful brain. They're right here for Christmas. Make wonderful Christmas gifts. I Am Creative by 5-year-old Sean and myself. And don't forget that you are creative. Be blessed and have a wonderful day. Thank you, Eric, for chiming in as well. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.